Welcome to the Inspiring Tech Leaders podcast with me, Dave Roberts. Today I'm thrilled to welcome Giles Lindsay to the show. Giles is a seasoned Chief Technology Officer, Board Director and Technology Leader with a remarkable record of driving digital transformation and leading high-performing technology teams. Giles has become a leading voice in agile delivery, DevOps culture and strategic innovation. He's the founder and CEO of Agile Delta Consulting, where he empowers organizations to unlock agility at scale, helping businesses not only adapt to change but thrive through it. He's also a passionate advocate for modern leadership and has served as a CTO in residence, mentoring and advising companies on everything from product strategy to engineering excellence. From shaping high-level tech strategies to championing psychological safety and people-first cultures, Giles brings a unique blend of technical insight and human-centric leadership that's more relevant now than ever. What a pleasure to have you here today, Giles.
Thanks, Dave, very much for having me on your show.
So, Giles, over your extensive career in tech leadership and digital transformation roles, can you tell the audience more about your own career journey and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. My career has spanned over 25 years, actually coming up to 30 years. I know you can't see it, but my hair color has certainly changed in the last few years. And over the last sort of 25 to 30 years, I've led technology in fintech, travel, healthcare, property sectors. I've held CIO, CTO, VP engineering, leadership coaching roles as well. And I've done things such as scaling agile and digital delivery teams from 10 people to over 400 across global operations. I've led teams building AI integrated platforms and helped shift the agile mindset and agile approach beyond IT teams into the wider business as well. And more recently, I've worked at the board level, influencing enterprise strategy and those agility models for the business. And hopefully now I am recognized as a global authority in business agility due to that practical leadership impact.
Well, that's an incredible wealth of experience that you've built up over that period. I also know you've been quite modest about your achievements, Giles, because you've been included in the CIO 100 and also recognised with the Legend Award from the Global CIO Forum. And amongst all of this, you found time to write a book, which is absolutely amazing. So what was that moment or challenge that motivated you to write the Clearly Agile book?
Great question. For me, the motivation for writing the book was a frustration, I think, at Agile, seeing Agile repeatedly misapplied or siloed, especially in tech teams. And, I spent a career, I was using Agile ways of working before the Agile Manifesto in the late 90s with XP and Scrum. And then obviously became a Scrum Master and a coach and then an instructor. And today, obviously, leading the Business Agility Institute here in the UK and a non-exec director at the Agile Business Consortium. And it really was this misapplication, this silo effect. Leaders were genuinely missing something that connected agile practices with real world organizational agility. And that gap ultimately led to the creation of my model, which I use certainly to help me launch digital and agile transformations and initiatives in organizations, called the CLEAR model. And that stands for culture, leadership, execution, adaptability, and responsiveness. And for me, it's based on many years of real world leadership and transformation leading experience. And, it's certainly served me well over the last 5-6 years.
Well, that's fantastic. And I've got a copy of the book and I reference back to that CLEAR model too. So what's the biggest misconception organizations have about an agile culture? And how should tech leaders create an environment where experimentation and learning are truly valued?
Ah, Dave, I wish we had about 40 minutes just to do this one topic alone. That biggest misconception for me, I think, is people somehow thinking that using tools like Jira or Asana or tools like that, or doing stand-ups every day somehow equals agility. And for me, that just simply isn't the case. you know, agility, true agility is how an organization learns, thinks, adapts, not simply how it tracks tasks using a ticketing system like the aforementioned. And, I do in the book warn against false or fake agility, throughout, and organizations must be aware of this. And, often I do find joining organizations, teams look busy, but simply aren't evolving their ways of working, in organizations. Agility is not speed or chaos, right? At the end of the day, it really is this world of structured intent, clear purpose, I would say, probably, and the freedom to ultimately learn.
And when you talk about changing mindsets, that leads me on to my next question, which is you champion post heroic leadership, moving away from that command and control style. So, how do leaders unlearn heroic instincts and embrace empowerment?
Again, wonderful question. I've spent probably the last 5 to 10 years, the with the more senior roles, and once I've got a seat at the executive table, to help my fellow peers and leaders move from that sort of command and control world to as much of an enablement world as possible. And the leadership element in the clear model, the L, really does help do this, right? It shifts from sometimes, people thinking they're an expert to being an enabler. Leaders need to ask better questions, listen more, and ultimately remove blockers as well. So, I talk also about traits, real leadership traits like humility, curiosity, clarity without this level of micromanagement, trust being that number one word I use with the teams. Leaders ultimately must go first. They have to model that openness, they have to model and show the learning going on that they are doing themselves. And they need to share and show that vulnerability inside the organization, ultimately to earn trust. It's not a weakness in any way, shape, or form. It really will enable the trust to be seen and generated right across the organization.
So, your model tackles the execution strategies like sprint planning and retrospectives. How do you help companies overcome the trap of doing agile without seeing real delivery improvements?
Uh, Brilliant question again, Dave. Clear's execution principle ultimately focuses on outcomes and not needing to necessarily have a load of rituals. I've shared many times, certainly at conferences, where I had a team of real world zealots who followed the 17 pages of the Scrum Guide to the letter of the law, and yet they delivered zero value inside the organization. And yet at the same time, I had this team that was just simply awesome in terms of communication and collaboration. And they delivered greater value than this kind of pure agile doing agile team within the business. And I do find that many teams do follow these ceremonies but fail to deliver any real value. Many people actually call this, it's known globally as agile or corporate theater, sometimes also known as ritual without return. Right. So my role going in there, not only as that technology leader, but as that agile leader, is helping leaders align their business execution with the business outcomes by making sure there is proper, clear purpose, rapid feedback loops, and true decision clarity being made at the C-suite level, like never before.
I absolutely agree, that's so important. So, as you know, measuring agility can be tricky. So, how do organizations go about quantifying responsiveness and adaptability?
There are metrics that can do this, right? We can start talking about lead time, cycle time, speed to act on feedback. But for me, it's about how fast we can pivot and how fast priorities need to change, pivoting on new insight inside the organizational design, right? And it's about making sure we've got dynamic OKRs or KPIs, whatever you are using within your business. Things like the percentage of ideas, new ideas being tested, or the time to go from insight through to implementation. People might call that idea to delivering value, right? And I think there also needs to be a fundamental link back to psychological safety throughout the organization, not just the technology teams, but the whole organization. So that having that link back to psychological safety, teams can safely raise issues and adapt their direction of travel based on those pivots and those real world insights that are coming into them, hopefully, obviously, from the leadership team as well.
And as you know, many agile transformations struggle. So, what are the two top pitfalls you've seen, and how do you proactively help clients to navigate them?
Thanks, Dave. My first pitfall: lack of leadership buy-in. Right? Without executive support, Agile will stay stuck in those technology teams, and that is it. Right? That leadership buy-in. I once had an interview for a CTO role, and I was getting on like a house on fire with the CEO, and I could see us working together fabulously. Giles, thanks very much. We were about 53 minutes into an hour meeting in his office, and he then turned around and dropped the bombshell, and he said, right, so you're going to lead this change program, this transformation, digital transformation in the organization. Unfortunately, I can't have anything to do with it because I'm just going to be far too busy running the business on a day-to-day basis. And it was like a needle on a record player moment. And I was like, what? Sorry, what? And he sort of repeated it kindly again for a second time. And I just went, this isn't going to work. You've got to be leading it, right? It's this, making sure we don't have a lack of leadership buy-in and someone leading from the very top. And he said, no, I just can't do it. And I said, well, if that's the case, you don't want me in the business doing this, because I need you to be leading it, and I need to be standing beside you to support you. And we went back and forward for about 3 or 4 minutes, and he wasn't going to change. And we shook hands and agreed to sort of, keep in touch. But for all intents and purposes, I've never spoken to the chap again. He wasn't going to be the person with leadership buy-in. And my second is organizations, or at least the technology divisions within organizations, treating Agile as a project method rather than a business capability, true business capability. And executive habits rarely change. And as such, digital or agile ways of working inside a business won't change, won't scale without that level of leadership transformation as well. And so the clear model, when I'm bringing that into an organization, helps provide a full spectrum model that actually embeds agility all the way from mindsets at one end through to delivery metrics at the other.
But obviously, not everyone is ready to go on that journey. But having the courage to say that and identify that to begin with, I think, that speaks volumes. And in chapter 12 of your book, you explore future trends. What emerging trends like AI are reshaping agility?
Hopefully, we're all aware of what AI can do for us in our organizations today. And those capabilities, AI, ML, automation, are transforming how teams operate, plan, and make decisions. Again, the clear model highlights this world of adaptability and responsiveness as really needing to be essential parts of organizational DNA for helping embrace those new technologies without losing the human value aspect as well. And, for me, I've talked about it in the book, AI isn't just a tool, right? It changes how risk is assessed and how collaboration happens. And so, for a very long time, I've advocated for responsible AI. Recently published an AI ethics and governance white paper through the BCS Chartered Institute for IT. And, it's about that need for ethical review and human-centered design has to be part of any agile evolution that involves things like AI, ML, IoT, blockchain, whatever new capabilities you're ultimately using.
What are your top recommendations for leaders who want to shift from doing agile to actually being agile?
Thanks, Dave. Great question. For me, it's getting everybody to sometimes somehow get back to basics. Start with that mindset. Start with that organizational culture. Start with fixing things at the DNA level within your business. And then your frameworks and your other methodologies will follow on later. When I arrive at organizations, I often use the diagnostic tools of the Clear model as a lens to assess leadership structure and feedback mechanisms. And therefore, this helps me reframe this shift as adaptive leadership in action, I like to call it. And so this is what I need to see happening with inside the business, when I'm arriving. I think a lot of leaders also need to let go of rigid playbooks. They need to start building those conditions I said earlier around trust, curiosity, and hopefully aligning some autonomy throughout the teams who obviously report into these people.
And finally, Giles, what is an agile myth you'd like to bust?
Number one myth. I've heard it more times than anything else. I suppose if I've been paid £1 for it in my career, I would be fairly rich. The number one myth, agile is just for tech teams. I hear this all the time, and you can't apply this mindset and this agility across the rest of the organizational design. Well, I've done it. So this is completely false. This is the number one myth, right? And as such, again, going back to the book, going back to the model, it helps apply this level of agility to all organizational functions like the people team, like finance, like legal, like operations. It's not just a capability of delivery or IT functions. Possibly a second one, and I would get to would be that I often hear agile means no structure. And of course, in reality, the right structures inside an organization ultimately enable agility. So, the book actually proves that effective frameworks and models like Clear create the clarity and space to move. It doesn't constrain it. And that's what I want to do. And it's what I want to carry forward in every future role in every organization I end up in.
I love that. Creating the space and clarity to move rather than agile being the mechanism that constrains change. Well, that's all we've got time for today. A huge thank you again to you, Giles, for sharing your career journey and insights. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thank you once again for being part of the Inspiring Tech Leaders podcast.
Thank you very much, Dave, for having me. I really appreciate it.